Hi.
My name is Reva Chambliss, and I will be chairing today's Committee of the Whole on May 1st, 2024, and this meeting is called to order. The first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda, and we typically don't need approval on that. We just have one information item today, so we will skip past that. And we have approval of April 17th, 2024 Metropolitan Committee of the Whole minutes.
We don't have a quorum.
Or 8
We should have a quorum.
2.
Well, we do now.
We do now. Lost my key. Maybe 9.
Now we're in quorum.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes from April 17th?
So moved. Oh,
It's been moved by Judy, I think,
second.
and seconded by Councilmember Lilligren. And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries to approve the minutes. Our next information item is from the MTPD for Quarter 1 report on Safety and Security Action Plan updates.
Chair Chambliss, council members, good evening. My name is Leslie Cadaris. I'm the general manager of Metro Transit, and I am joined by Chief Ernest Morales III and Deputy General Manager COO Brian Funk, and we're going to provide this quarter's Safety and Security Action Plan update. Oh, maybe I need a different clicker. Or is Greg advancing the slides instead of out here? Okay. Maybe. There we go. All right. So I'll start off, just provide a brief overview before handing it over to the police chief to provide an update from MTPD, and then Brian will close it out by providing several updates about action items that are progressing in our operation and maintenance
Sorry
areas.
about that. Oh, geez, whoops, went the wrong way.
That's actually kind of cool, thanks.
Yeah.
So at this point, you're all very familiar with the background on the Safety and Security Action Plan. This June, the Safety and Security Action Plan will turn 2 years old. I'll just note, this was always meant to be dynamic work that we improve and grow as we learn, and we're continuing to look for ways to improve and strengthen and grow this plan as we move forward. Right now, there are 43 action items across the 3 areas of work that the council endorsed back in June of 2022. Those areas of work are improving conditions on the system, training and supporting employees, and engaging customers and partners. This quarter, we continue to move action items into implementation. At this point, none of our 43 action items are not started. We have 3 that are in some stage of planning, and then the rest are in some stage of implementation. I want to remind you that we also produce a report each quarter along with this presentation that we bring to you. The report includes an action item by action item update. So if you want more information about any of the action items we're not covering today, I encourage you to check out that report. We provide all this information on our website as well. And before I turn it over to the chief, I just want to note that 43 action items in an action plan is a lot of different activity, but one clear focus in our action plan is our priority of improving and growing layers of official presence on our system. Back to the initial community engagement that really founded what became the Safety and Security Action Plan, we've heard from customers and our own employees that seeing official presence on the system leads them to feel safer and more welcomed. And so that's really been a key area of focus over the last several months. And as you'll hear tonight, we've made some clear progress over the last quarter as well, especially with the start of our Transit Rider Investment Program agents in February. But just as a reminder, the layers of presence we now have stood up and continue to grow include our Metro Transit police officers. They remain foundational to our safety and security work on our system. Community service officers have become even more visible since December when they began inspecting fares and issuing administrative citations. Transit Rider Investment Program agents, as I mentioned, and Brian will talk more about this in his presentation, but they started in late February and are actively on the light rail, also inspecting fares, but are providing a wide array of customer assistance. Supplemental security is now present at 7 locations, and our transit service intervention project continues. This was a project required of us coming out of last year's transportation omnibus. We continue to have 10 different community-based organizations on our light rail system specifically, providing connections to social services and other resources.
Thank you, Leslie. Our regional administrator, Ryan O'Connor, has a clarifying question.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Leslie, just one question. You kind of went there right at the end, and so just because it's always confusing and important that we talk about this correct. So there's 43 items specifically in this plan. Then there's the 13 legislative priorities that were outlined for sales tax use last year. How many of the 43 items also crosswalk to the 13 or some other thing that happened last year? Like, how would you describe that, just so we can all keep our heads around it?
Sure. Chair Chambliss, Regional Administrator. I think there's a couple pieces to it. So in the bill last year, there were numerous policy provisions specific to public safety. So the Transit Rider Investment Program, which provided the authority for us to create the administrative citation program and to create the trip agents, that was part of the legislation, and that is integrated in the action plan. And maybe I should step back and say every policy piece in the bill last year is connected to an active action item. So it's all connected through the action plan in that way. But TRIP is part of that. The Transit Service Intervention Project is one of the items in the plan. The sign here, the paid fare zone, our work to improve signage, to the council updated the code of conduct, or excuse me, adopted a code of conduct last December. All of those items that were required by law are in the Safety and Security Action Plan. And then in addition to this, in the sales tax portion of the omnibus, there are the 13 items that the council is required to spend sales tax revenue on. And one of those is public safety. So for example, in the quarter one budget amendment adopted by the council a couple months back, that included additional trip agent positions. That also included several positions related to the cleaning and repair standards work in the legislation, which in our view at least has a tie to public safety. People tell us that when our facilities and vehicles are not well cleaned, well maintained, that sends a signal about how we're taking care of the space generally that relates to safety and so forth. So I hope that's getting at your question, but I can elaborate more if that'd be helpful.
Thank you for that clarification. Very valuable information to review again. Councilmember Johnson.
And to that point, and maybe you just touched on it, but also the federal safety planning that we have to do that is part of our work with the labor unions. That is also another set of safety enhancements and type work too that isn't part of this, or maybe it is intersecting with this.
Yeah, great question, Chair Chambliss, Councilmember Johnson. So yeah, the agency safety plans, which are a requirement from the federal government, and that the Joint Labor Management Safety Committee is required to approve as one of the requirements coming out of the bipartisan infrastructure law. That part of work is not public safety specific, but nonetheless, there are some intersections. For example, one of the action items in here pertains to a concern we've heard from employees about the use of narcotics on vehicles. And so one of our action items is studying that and understanding that and making sure we're doing the mitigation. So that would be an example of something that has been raised in the context of the agency safety plans through the Joint Labor Management Safety Committee, but has a tie into the Safety and Security Action Plan.
Just that
Thank
other
you, too.
element that we spoke about last year at some extent.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of part of this too.
And I'll note too, another example, the second area of work in the plan is training and supporting employees. We are looking at our de-escalation training. That's one of the action items required in there. That also ties into work that our Joint Labor Management Safety Committee is doing as there are additional federal requirements around de-escalation training for frontline employees. So yeah, there are intersections even though they're distinct plans.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. With the 43 items, there are a number of things that are not going to be specifically mentioned, but I do know that when we evaluated the safety and security, our employees had a lot of input.
Yes.
and they made requests for their safety and how they can, how we can be responsive as an agency to them as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So you can, did anyone else have their hand up? No? Okay, you can continue.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Regional Administrator. Good afternoon, council members. At a recent town hall, I was asked what was the most challenging aspect of my job. As a 34-year veteran in the profession of law enforcement, my biggest challenge as an outsider has been changing the culture here at the MTPD. As a leader, it's my job to challenge people to be better, and this may feel unsettling at times. But make no mistake about it, my priorities here are to lower crime, improve morale, retain our personnel, while hiring qualified candidates that are reflective of the communities we serve. With that said, the men and women of the Metro Transit Police Department must be applauded for their dedication and perseverance. We have much to celebrate. It's because of their hard work that I'm happy to report overall reported crime fell 7.7% across the system in Q1, compared to the same period last year. Right now, the majority of crimes that occur on transit are attributed to proactive policing. We began taking this approach of proactive policing last year. At that time, we identified 7 categories of crime that we are expected to see increase because of this approach. Those are listed here. Things like trespassing, drug and narcotic violations, and disorderly conduct. And that is exactly what we've been seeing. This is a look at a number of crimes that violate our rules for riding, along with drug, tobacco, and alcohol violations. In Q1, Metro Transit and the MTPD made onboard smoking and code of conduct violations our focus. The breakout chart on the right highlights these results. There were 401 trespassing violations in Q1. That's nearly double what we saw in Q1 of 2023. The number of smoking violations grew from 69 cases in Q1 of 2023 to 346 cases this past quarter. Meanwhile, the number of drug equipment violations we saw this past quarter is cut by more than half of what we saw compared to 1 year ago. Through proactive policing and increased enforcement, our message, smoking and drug use will not be tolerated on our system, is getting through. At the same time, we also saw a continued decrease in the most serious of crimes, also called the FBI's top 7. These are crimes like homicide, sex offenses, robbery, and assault. These are down 16.4% compared to last year. Here's another way to visualize what we are seeing in terms of crime. This is Q1 overall reported crime data per 100,000 rides. During this past quarter, there were more than 11.5 million rides taken across our system and a total of 2,232 crimes. About 59% of these crimes fall into the category of all other. The top being smoking, trespassing, and property damage. Here, the top 7 FBI crimes per 100,000 rides. Again, more than 11.5 million rides were taken across the system, and there were a total of 219 top 7 crimes. That means the top 7 crime rate is 1.9% per person. Let me emphasize that again. 11.5 million rides and 1.9% per person in regards to top 7 crimes. With the overall crime declining in Q1, we also saw a small decline in calls for service. Dispatch calls are down 11.6%. Officer-initiated calls are down 6.6%. You'll notice that over half of all the calls for service are officer-initiated. At our last presentation, some of the council members wanted data on what happens after an arrest. So the next 5 slides provide data on investigations, arrests, charges, and prosecutions during Q1. We'll start with investigations. In the last 3 months, there have been 455 cases assigned to MTPD investigators. Out of the total cases we've had this quarter, 243 have been closed or are inactive. 94 are active. 85 are pending, and we've issued an attempt to ID the suspects. 67 are pending attorney review, and 56 cases are still waiting to be assigned to an investigator.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, Chief. Question, please. So just on the last slide, please, the dispensation of the cases. When I'm just curious, when it says pending attorney review, we don't, who's attorney? What attorneys are reviewing these?
So these are city attorneys and
Sure,
county
those-
attorneys as well.
those
I'm
are the
going to get
parts.
into that in the next couple of
Perfect. All right,
slides.
thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Chair.
Go ahead.
Overall, there have been 1,179 arrests made in Q1. As of right now, 668 cases are pending in court or under attorney review. 99 are pending lab results or need further investigation. 280 cases resulted in a total or partial conviction. 121 cases were dismissed in court, and in 3 cases, charges were declined. These charts give a closer breakdown of how cases are being handled by city and county attorneys. In the first 3 months of this year, 979 cases have gone to city attorneys. 16 are pending attorney review. None have been declined to charge so far. 571 cases, that's more than half, have resulted in formal charges. 263 cases resulted in a conviction. 9 resulted in a partial conviction, and 120 were dismissed. We've submitted 93 cases to county attorneys in Q1. 12 are pending attorney review. Charges were declined in 3 cases. A majority, or 69 cases, have resulted in formal charges. 6 cases resulted in convictions, 2 resulted in a partial conviction, and 1 case was dismissed. This is a closer look at cases where a defendant was arrested and a formal complaint is pending. 19 are under investigation. A majority of these cases are pending lab results. 5 cases were closed by our investigations unit, and 4 transferred to another agency. We are making progress despite being down officers, something every police department in the country is dealing with. As of Q1, we have 106 full-time police officers, 15 community service officers, and 28 support services staff members. So what are we doing to differentiate ourselves from other law enforcement agencies?
Madam Chair.
Councilmember
One quick
Johnson.
question, Chief. On the slide with MTPD staffing, the second number then would be the authorized strength within the budget, correct?
Yes, Chair, Madam Chair, Councilmember Johnson, yes.
Okay.
171 would be the authorized strength.
Okay, and then community is 70 and then support 34. Okay,
Chair, yes.
just making sure. Okay, thank
Yes.
you. Appreciate that.
So what are we doing to differentiate ourselves from other law enforcement agencies? All Met Council employees are now eligible for a $3,000 referral bonus for every new or lateral officer that successfully completes field training and their probationary period. We also now offer a $4,000 educational stipend for every full-time officer so that they can continue to grow their career through additional law enforcement-related courses or training. At our last presentation, I also told you about our new CSO Pathways program. We help people from unconventional backgrounds get the training and college credits they need in order to become a community service officer, and then an MTPD officer. We plan to take what we've learned from our class in January, make some adjustments, and start our second class this fall. As for the large-scale recruitment campaign, we've received 84 applications for a full-time officer and 79 applications for community service officers. And we're still offering a $4,000 hiring bonus for full-time officers, $8,000 for lateral officers, and up to $18,000 for tuition reimbursement for community service officers.
Madam Chair.
Councilmember Johnson?
And just briefly on that last slide, Chief, of the 84 full-time officer applications, how many of them actually made it into the pipeline where they were either sworn in or they came real close and maybe somebody else picked them off or there was something at the end we couldn't take them? How are those numbers landing as far as, made it to swearing in?
Madam Chair? Go ahead. Councilmember Johnson, as of right now, we have a pending academy class going in July. We're still vetting those, but I'm very optimistic that we should have double digits in this next class.
Okay, and this class is part of that 84 application?
Madam Chair? Councilmember Johnson, yes.
And just to be clear, and the recruitment campaign timeframe is, when did we kick that off officially? How long have we been in that campaign?
Approximately at the beginning of this year.
Okay, great. And then of the hiring incentives that we've got, what do you think are the most effective things? And are there things that we could be doing differently that you're seeing in the marketplace that is landing, with folks in that pipeline of recruitment?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Johnson, we've just settled our contract. I believe that we're very competitive in the region as far as salaries are concerned and incentives that we're offering our members. However, as I stated at the beginning of my presentation here today, changing the culture and making the young officers feel like they belong to an organization is absolutely essential. And we have done things as redesigning the roll call room. I've taken photographs of every member to put their pictures there so they understand that this is the agency we belong to. And we're doing things like that so that they understand that we belong to a professional police department within the state of Minnesota.
And one more follow-up, Madam Chair, if I may. And on retention, how are we doing on retention? Because I think the last number I saw, we were at 107, we're at 106. And I just know retention is critical as much as attraction. And when people do leave the department, whether it's sworn or civilian, are we trying to capture, those reasons that people are leaving so we can incorporate that into the feedback loop as we're still trying to attract and retain officers?
Madam Chair. Councilmember Johnson? Yes, so as of the beginning of this year, I started conducting exit interviews. So before the person leaves, they're given the option to have an exit interview with me. And so far, they have been taking it up. So I do realize what the issues are as far as why they're leaving. And we're mitigating those issues so that we can return that personnel from what we learned.
And Madam Chair, I'll finish. Thank you, Chief, I appreciate that. And as I've said before, and you guys know this too in any organization, state interviews before you get to the leaving part are really important. So somebody's onboarding, they're still learning it, they may be unsure, but we're trying to land them, get them there. And at some point in a really, I think, robust culture where people are growing their roots, I guess I would say, is, finding out those state interviews. What will keep you here? What are you looking for before we're saying goodbye to them? That's just something that I think is not just strategic, but a tactic that I think we're trying to maybe use throughout the council. And the only reason I bring it up is in management, we are talking about things like this quite often. So if that's something that eventually, I don't want to tell you how to run your department, for sure. But I just, at that moment, if we can catch some of that early, it'd be kind of great to know.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that is kind of reflected in the recruitment number and how that kind of dwindles down. Sometimes it's not a match. We talked about that before. It's not for everybody. All of those things factor into, the retention number and whether or not they're going to make it through the process. We want that process to be valuable. We want it to be real. We want to make sure that there's a good fit for retention.
Thank you. Well, while working to increase staffing, we've also been focusing on strengthening our relationships and partnerships with law enforcement agencies throughout our jurisdiction. In June, we will be taking part in Operation Safe Summer, a multi-agency effort between Minneapolis and St. Paul Police, Hennepin and Ramsey County Sheriff's Office, State Patrol, the ATF, FBI, and the Department of Justice to combat crime in the Twin Cities. I've talked a lot about changing the culture of the department. That change is represented in our new motto, Mission First, People Always, which also speaks to our commitment to community outreach. During Q1, members of the MTPD attended 32 events and connected with 1,500 community members. Our Homeless Action Team continues to be a national model for outreach excellence. During this last quarter, HAT responded to 378 calls for service and helped secure housing for 5 families. The team also held 19 outreach events on its own, connecting 145 people to resources for housing and benefits. At our last update on February 7th, we had just launched our social media channels 2 days before. Now, 3 months later, we have grown an audience across Facebook, Instagram, and X of more than 11,000 people. Each week, we provide an update on the department and discuss our progress, public safety initiatives, outcome of high-profile cases, and most importantly, we get the chance to showcase the hard work of the men and women of the MTPD. We've also put emphasis on reaching a more diverse audience through community-oriented media like the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder and KMOJ Radio, where I'll now be a reoccurring guest. In addition, we are now prominently featured on the National 30 by 30 Initiative website for our commitment to reaching a force that's 30% female by the year 2030. We have made great strides in the past year, and with the continued support of the Met Council, we will be able to fulfill our motto of Mission First, People Always. Thank you. I'll now hand it over to...
Thank you. Councilmember Vento?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief. I have a bit of information I received at a meeting in South St. Paul last week that I'd like to share, and I'll kind of explain my way through this. The leaders in South St. Paul, public and private sector leaders, meet monthly, and I have the privilege of attending those meetings. And at last week's meeting, the local chief of police reported that during the next 18 to 24 months, 25% or approximately 2,500 police officers throughout the state of Minnesota will be retiring. And it really kind of hit me like a bat across the back of the head. It was pretty stunning to hear that. And having been an educator and an educator union advocate for a long time, it just got the old brain going really fast. And it posed to me a challenge that not only the three of you and your colleagues have, but that we as a council have going forward. First of all, how are we going to compete for employees? How are we going to retain and compete for employees if that level of retirement is going on statewide? And we know that the baby boom is going to continue to roll through and take people with them beyond those 24 months. But I think it puts a real challenge to us as a council as to the kinds of decisions we're going to be making in the coming weeks and months as it relates to transit development in our corridor. And it's not just within our MTPD ranks, but it's also within our operator and maintenance ranks. frankly, it's an issue throughout the council, because I don't think this phenomena is limited to law enforcement. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I would ask of both Met Transit and MTPD, if you can work through HR to come up with some demographics for us as to what you anticipate as far as retirements in the next 18 to 24 months and longer, if you can. I know that's hard to do, but you can come up with an approximate based on age and years of experience. It doesn't have to be a number that you have to swear to, but it gives us some sort of a sense as to what challenges we're going to be facing. I don't want to make decisions that aren't going to work for this region. And I think employment and having the workforce we need going forward is a big factor in those decisions we're going to be making. Thank you.
Good point, Councilmember Vento. Regional Administrator Ryan.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and I'll give Leslie a little bit of an assist on this one too, because I was last night looking at the workforce statistics for the organization, and
Great. Bring them to management.
I didn't know what that O meant for a second, but we're gonna take that.
That's good.
And I was corresponding with Cassandra Tabor, our HR lead, and then with Phil Wall-Jasper, the deputy RA. And there's a part here about both data and narrative and understanding what is happening across the organization, what it really looks like, that is important going forward. And it's something that I want to make sure we're bringing forward here so you all get a better perspective on pieces of that as well as you look at it moving forward. For example, and I've been through this in one other place too, where I've seen the same thing. The baby boomer issue is really not the issue in front of this organization at this point. Only 20% of employees at this point identify as baby boomers. This is a very Gen X heavy, followed by millennial, then boomer organization on the whole. And it doesn't break down that differently across area. And sometimes our narratives don't always keep up with where we're at. So it's helped me to see some of this because the retirement bubble in many ways has sort of happened here on a broad level. I think the issue now is actually going to be more, and this is getting out in front of it a little, but since it goes directly there, it's as the demographer for the state talks about a dwindling number of available workers, it's being on the cutting edge of winning those recruitment battles and convincing people to work in public sector service jobs. That's going to be where it is because there's a smaller group coming through. And the boomer piece stands out to me as one. Alongside this, though, there's general workforce trends. And I do want to give you positivity in that they look way better in 2024 than they did in 2023 or 2022. And there's this pandemic thing around retention you can see. I was talking to Cassandra this morning about it. Looking forward to talking about some of that. But within that, you're going to always have some jobs that are going to be unique. And I appreciate the comments because you hit on a few of those, Councilmember. And a number of them right now fall in Brian's area as we talk about mechanics, or they fall in the chief's area as we talk about law enforcement. And we do need to have both, working with the management committee, clear ideas of where are there kind of like an all hands on deck approach to this is not a normal trend. And then what are the normal trends happening around us as well? And so I just want to share a little bit of that context. It came up this morning in the regional administrator or the regional administration division's town hall. And we're even in that conversation, it kind of felt like we were a year and a half behind on some of our assumptions about our workforce this morning. And it's on myself and our leaders to frame with all of you how to get the narrative caught up to what we're seeing, because there is some important stuff. I hope that's helpful.
Well, I think it was very helpful, and it speaks to your question about gathering information and talking about how that data connects to the narrative and shapes that narrative is really important. Councilmember Vento?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate that, Ryan, and that's the kind of information we need. 5 years, I haven't had an explanation like that. And I really appreciate that because we've kind of talked around it and we've talked about a very narrow employment sort of situation and we haven't gotten the full picture. So I think that's really important for us to do. And I think staying competitive is going to be really, really important. Being on the Transportation Committee, what you said about the uniquenesses of some of these positions, I look at some of those maintenance positions and it's got to be hard to find find qualified folks for some of those positions. So you're absolutely right, and thank you. I appreciate it.
Madam Chair.
Councilmember
I would be
Johnson.
remiss if I didn't say in management, we've been asking for this for at least a year and a half to 2 years. And so we had to wait. leadership changes and Cassandra coming on, which is great, and you're here, so we're getting there. But some of us have recognized that we are off. And, you know, while we focus a lot on transportation and transit, it is IS, it is ES, it is everywhere in this organization. And so when the management committee, for example, got our quarterly financial update, and you can see where the surpluses are coming from in unspent revenues, a big chunk of that is that authorized strength versus what we're actually paying out, and it is a lot. So when you think about it divisionally, there's work to be done there, which is a big challenge. I don't want to sugarcoat anything anymore. I think we're really good at sugarcoating things, and I mean that in the best way. We want to come out with our best foot forward, be positive, but we have to be real. And so I want to get deeper into where you're going with this, Ryan, and I appreciate it, but for the whole council, because it's glaring. When $6 million contracts for 2-year cycles have to come so that we can plug the gap that we've got in our authorized versus our, boots on the ground with PD, okay, we can do stopgap and we can get there and we can get more people on the trains and the buses and the stations. But that's not a permanent solution either, unless we make it a permanent solution, I mean, we might have to, I don't know. But I agree with Councilmember Vento and other council members in meetings where we've got a lot coming at us. And these are the things that have to be factored in to risk for our enterprise and for whatever it is we're trying to do, whether it's ES, whether it's, administration itself, or the divisions in transit and so on. So it can't come fast enough because if we are rolling out programs and we've got Southwest coming on and we're trying to get other corridors coming on, it takes people. And I'll say one more thing. And speaking with some people at the Met Council here, just kind of deep in their work, and they love their jobs, but there are people that are retiring that nobody else knows really what they do, but they're very critical to the work that they do here. And we've got to get better at making sure that we've got bench. And so I'm just saying all these things because I think we've all been on teams. We're all on a team here. But, when you're in that team and you're looking around going like, we got stuff to fix here, we, as a council, and with Ryan's leadership and the directors, we need to get on top of this so that even the teams feel good about where they're at and they're going to get the support they need, because we keep asking them to do more and more and more. And I see this in CD as well. So, I'm just going to say we're doing everything that we can be doing with what we have. I really believe we're right there. But that's not going to get us to where we need to go. So thinking differently, I don't know how, everybody's competing for talent. So we've been putting out incentives. You've been doing a great job getting into the community. And we got to figure out more because there are some fierce competitors out there that not only in PD are taking our people, but just other lines of work where people don't have to do some of the hard things that our folks are having to do. So I can't impress upon that enough. I'm sad that there's not more council members here because I think this is really critical information for everybody to absorb, because I think this council wants to be very aggressive when it comes to putting services out there. And we are. And it's fun to see the money coming in to pay for it. But it's not just the money, it's the people. And so I guess, maybe in my own head for the past 2 years, this is the thing that I've been trying to wrestle with. And I see movement and progress, but it's gonna take a lot more. So I just have to say that, and even with the numbers here, they're great, but we all know this. There are a lot of things happening on the trains that no calls are being made. The service isn't happening just because either people are still afraid to make the calls or whatever. So I commend you for the work you're doing, and we have to support our people here and figure out what are we gonna do if we don't have enough people to support all of the infrastructure we need to not just take care of what we have today, but take care of what we've got coming at us in the future. So thank you for the time, Madam Chair. It kind of moves into other parts of the council, but we're all connected. And I do appreciate Ryan. I'm so glad you had that discussion, because having somebody to sit there and figure it out and get it to us so we can support you in that is huge right now. And the sooner the better.
Well, we know implementing the Safety and Security Action Plan in these challenging times is going to take all of us working as a team. And I'm thankful for the quarterly reports. I'm thankful for our values of mission first and people always. And I'd like to give you a chance to respond, and then Councilmember Pacheco, I've got you too.
Ma'am, just a couple of quick notes. And one is that, we often talk about what the baby boomers, and I'm one of those folks, and what's going on with them.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, you're gonna have me for a while. And so, but we need to start looking at the younger population as well. And so in Latino population, over 40% of the Latino population is under 18 or under 20. And they're the fastest growing. And so what are we doing now to have them ready for this? The other day, when we had the presentation from Councilmember Wolf's, Councilmember Barber's area, it was a great example of what the potential is. And they can make the presentation. They knew what they were doing here. And we had to keep engaging these folks going forward. And even some of the young people, even in the schools, we maybe get back to having the fire truck and the model police cars and whatever, just so people get a better handle on it. We're not spending enough time bringing people behind us as we are trying to look at how the exit and what's happening to them.
Thank you. Councilmember Morales?
Just had one comment. We had a presentation, one of the other committee of the wholes for outlook, growth and everything. And the one ethnicity that had the highest birth rates was the Hispanic community. Then also, when you're talking about reaching out to the high school students and the younger generation, when you look at the skilled trades, there's been multiple studies where the entry level age is currently at 30 years old. That's 12-year gap for people getting to the skilled trades. So it is huge. So we need to do something to focus on the younger generation to get them a little bit more involved into different skill trades, because as we know, not everyone is going to college, not everyone is built for it, but skilled trades are great opportunities for our high school students or even college students that decide that it wasn't for them to get into.
Skilled trades, community service officer, police officer, all options. Did I see someone else on this side? No? Councilmember?
A question? She had
Carter?
her hand up first, and then
Okay, Carter and then Wolf.
I appreciate your having brought up youth in connection to our transit safety. And I also very, very much appreciate that we came into the presentation today with data and information that we're continuing to watch, and showing also the collaboration with our communities with respect to understanding how effective the work our folks are doing is as it reaches to those other jurisdictions and the need for them to continue in pursuit. I note that we are looking at the crime information and observing the positive trend as a result, of course, of our layers of support, but also that we have these tick-ups where we're seeing officer-reported crime, and also that we're seeing the quarter-to-quarter reduction, even though there may be those increases quarter last year to this quarter. So that's all very, very positive, and we're moving forward. I'm wondering how you are thinking about the ongoing use of data and the collaborative use of data and the sharing of that data beyond these reports, beyond, the legislature, of course, and this council. And I'm wondering about that in connection to what our goals would be, as we're looking at arrest, as we're looking at charging and prosecution. We know that's part of the story. But how are you looking at the collaborative use of that data and information to pursue our goals? It's a part of my question about the data. And how, in fact, how can we get more deeply into that data over time? I realize we don't have everything today. And in particular, with respect to our youth. We can learn a lot about what's going on from the data, and also create our collaborative work to address our needs to help improve across the region, our safety. So let me just ask that general question about your perspective on the ongoing and collaborative use of data.
Madam Chair, Council Member Carter, thank you for the question. Because as of recently, 3 weeks ago, I brought in all the heads of the agencies, St. Paul, Minneapolis, both sheriff's offices, the prosecutors from Ramsey, as well as Hennepin County. We're going to have a follow-up meeting in the next couple of weeks as a result of their request from us and how we can collaborate further. But with this information, as I stated from day number one when I got hired, we can never arrest our way out of the situation. Transit is a small window of the larger societal issues that we are seeing, so we need to offer the members in need of services those services. So what we're doing when we study and dig deep down into our data is we want to get the court system involved so that we can offer diversion programs and so that we can focus on a small percentage of recidivist offenders that continuously commit the crimes day in and day out. That is a very small percentage. I would say approximately 3% of the population we deal with on a daily basis. And this is who we want to focus our attention on while providing the resources necessary to the people in need, and that we hope with our multi-layered public safety response and the added layers that we have throughout the system, we will eventually flush people out, providing them the services they need, not making arrests, unless you are one of those recidivists. So this is something that we're going to have our second conversation on. We're going to make a plan, and then we're going to implement the plan. We'll come back and evaluate the effectiveness of that plan.
I'm very encouraged by your having gone to that extent about the opportunity to work as a team across the region to see the results that we're looking forward to, and also about your courage to share. You know, as Commissioner Johnson said, we want to be positive, and we have the most ambitious approach to what we can achieve. And together, as we all share that critical information, as we peel back, you know, what we are seeing, we will be able to discover those issues we all need to address together and to make certain that we are able to achieve our goals. So encouragement to you to continue that, you know, to be as transparent as possible with our partners as we work together, and also to think through how we continue to share more and more information with partners in the community who are helping us with our goals as well. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing more as we dig down deeper into what is going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that work that you're doing on bringing people together. That's important, and people don't realize that we're just one little cog and don't have all of the pieces to take care of all of the things. I appreciate your information on what happens after you arrested people. I'm curious what the closed inactive means. Is that they didn't have enough evidence, or you diverted people, or what was that for? And then I have some follow-up after that.
Madam Chair. Councilmember Wolf, thank you for that question. So closed means it was closed with either a conviction because it was passed on to the prosecutor's office, or based on the evidence that was presented at the time of the arrest, there wasn't enough to establish probable cause. And that's basically what that means.
Okay, thank you. And then you had your information about sending them on to cities and counties. I was reading the paper last week, I think it was last week, and they had an article about the guy that punched somebody in St. Paul and killed them at one of our stations, and he got sentenced to, I think it was 16 years in prison for doing that. And I couldn't help but contrast that with the guy that pushed that guy under the train in Minneapolis, and he wasn't charged with anything. That's got to be hard on our officers to deal with stuff like that. Well, not just the officers, anybody who, being the person who had to clean that up. I mean, that's something nobody should ever have to see, and it takes a toll on a lot of people. I don't know if we're allowed to get to that level of detail, but having a contrast between what serious crimes get charged in Ramsey and what serious crimes get charged in Hennepin with the two different county attorneys. If they're very divergent, I would like to know that, because that makes a difference for our safety and the safety of our employees and our riders if people aren't accountable when they do things like that.
Yeah, I think we're on a good path in talking with all the leaders in the different cities to have those kind of discussions, and I'm glad that's going to continue. Did you have a response, or?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Wolf. Yes, you pointed it out. We have two different prosecuting attorneys, one in Ramsey and one in Hennepin County. What I can say is that I definitely have a great relationship with Ramsey County and with Hennepin County as well. As a matter of fact, the Hennepin County's District Attorney's Office has assigned a special prosecutor to transit to help us focus on our cases. So we're heading in the right direction.
Madam Chair. And just briefly, as it relates to partners, are we also working with Andy Luger, the U.S. Attorney, as he is working on crime and gangs? Because, I mean, we rarely use the word gangs here, but I'm going to start using it because, you know, that is a whole economic system of crime, and it takes a lot of something special to dig and break that. So when you talk about recidivism, that's one thing, but there's a whole culture that we're, you know, an enterprise that we're working against. And, you know, we've got our major transit going through all of this. So that, I just, not maybe for today, but I just would like to know, as you work with all the partners, because we're all in it together, and I'm talking mostly about law enforcement at this point and the prosecuting attorneys, you know, help us to just understand what the overall strategy is there to really break these gangs and try to, you know, have an impact there. Because we know where they're operating, we know who they are, we know where they're showing up, and they don't care, and they're going to keep going. And that's the piece that if we do not figure that out, and it's not on us, but we probably are a lot of first response to some of this stuff, it's just going to be very hard to have the level of service that our clients deserve on our system. So again, it's not for us to solve alone, but we are eyes and ears out there, and I don't know what the strategy is. In public safety, I don't hear much about what it is, and maybe that's on purpose, but we're a piece of that, and I'd like to know.
Chief Morales.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Johnson, thank you for that. We are in contact with our federal partners. As a matter of fact, if not for workforce issues, we have already discussed, as I laid out a 5-year plan for the MTPD and my vision, we will be assigning our members to the task force, the federal task forces. That's with our DEA partners, our marshals, as well as the BCA, even the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. These are conversations I'm having with those leaders of the agencies, but we have to build up our workforce before I can make those opportunities available to our veteran police officers.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Well, I think we're on a good track, and I appreciate the leadership you're establishing within our region. So we can go on.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair and council members. Again, Brian Funk, Deputy General Manager, Chief Operating Officer. It's a pleasure to be here. As everyone knows, I am not a police officer. I don't impersonate police officers, except maybe when Councilmember Morales and I ride. But in reality, this is a team effort, and I'm really honored to be here at the table with the General Manager and our Chief of Police, because we all take ownership in the service that we deliver and making sure that it's safe for our employees and our customers. And so I have what I think are some good updates today about the teamwork that's going on within Metro Transit, and really excited to share a little bit more about that. As the chief mentioned, and Leslie well knows, 11.5 million rides last quarter. That's a lot of opportunities for things to happen, good and bad. And I think that we've made a real sea change in that people are experiencing a much better system. And so a big portion of that started just over 2 months ago as this board approved a contract with Allied Universal to do the first foray into deployment of trip agents. They started their service at the end of February. And so it's a coordinated effort. It is currently living within the operations area, but we work closely with Transit Police and others on how that looks, how people are trained, and what those interactions are going to be. It's one of those great opportunities for success on the system. These folks are out there for a good portion of the day, 7 days a week, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Right now, of the authorized complement for 24 contracted officers or agents, excuse me, we have 18 who are currently deployed with 5 additional starting this month. And so we're on a good path. We are going to continue our deployment for the trip agents focused on the Metro Blue and Green lines. That's kind of where our main charge is. And in addition to the fare inspection, these agents are really out there, as Leslie mentioned, to help with wayfinding, route schedules, the customer service element that we want people to have a good experience. I know that many of us ride the system a lot, and not every ride is a bad ride. There's a lot of good out there. There's a lot of good relationships that happen, and most of the time, it's event-free, and I can listen to a podcast or scroll my phone and go about, but it's nice to have additional support out on the system when things don't go right or people have questions or they're unfamiliar. And so these trip agents are going through multiple weeks of training in a classroom setting to get an overview of what are the roles and responsibilities that are statutory requirements, including basic first aid, CPR, and the requirement to carry and distribute Narcan. After that, they go through a field training program, much like others in the law enforcement field or field operations, having that mentorship out there, gaining experience in a group setting before you're paired up with your cohort is really important to gain confidence and skill building, again, before you're on your own. Since February 23rd, these agents have had more than 2,200 onboard shifts, and they've had more than 31,000 interactions, including those fare inspections. And so they're out there doing really great work. We receive very positive feedback, and we're looking to grow that program. And that moves into the next slide about what's next. And so as we've gained these 8 to 9 weeks of experience, we're learning that we need to do some things differently in training. And so one of the areas that we know we can bolster is having some training and some tools available for those trip agents to be able to communicate about transit-related topics, including the proper way to pay your fare in multiple languages. Right now, Spanish has been the primary language that they've vocalized. They'd like some additional resources, and so we're developing that in-house to be able to bring people back to get them those skills, and then move from there into Somali and Hmong as 2 other primary languages. Our agents do speak multiple languages. 89% of the agents identify as people of color, and we have at least 4 languages that are spoken fluently, and so that has come in very handy. But we want to equip all of the agents so we're not reliant on sole individuals or sole shifts to be able to provide that resource. We're looking at technology improvements as we have recognized we need to equip those agents to better document their experience out in the field, and so establishing a system that moves away from just getting started with things on paper logs, those types of things. It'll aid in future deployment strategies, including in information from the Transit Police Department about where we're seeing activity that we should be responding to is important in statute, and so we're working towards that together with the Transit Police. And then, really looking at the fare validation equipment we have so that we can be very quick and responsive, not holding up customers, not generating unnecessary delay or conversation about somebody who has paid their fare, but we're working through some of our equipment issues. And then finally, we're working on additional hiring as promised when we brought forward the amendment. That was a sort of a stopgap measure to get us started and then evaluate moving forward. We did, in the first quarter, have an agreement with the ATU, a letter of agreement on how that trip program would look and be included in the ATU contract, and so that's very good news. Right now, we're in the process of hiring management staff to then this month begin hiring agents who are Metro Transit employees, and so we're really excited about taking that additional step. A couple other updates on the cleaning standards. So as Leslie mentioned, one of the big items that we've heard from our customers that operations can directly influence is how things feel out on the system. And so a couple updates in that area. We're making headway in workforce, and I didn't include this in the slide, but thanks to the great discussion here earlier today, one of the things that I got from my weekly huddle with my operations directors just this morning was that they're seeing incoming applications at a rate that they haven't experienced in 5 or 6 years. They're starting to actually onboard and have multiple technicians in each of the skill areas, bus, light rail, commuter rail, where they're, we have a lot of room to grow, and we're going to continue to expand, but they're feeling really positive. And so I want to thank this council. One of the big sea changes has been the union agreement. We made significant market adjustments working through management committee and the whole council to recognize some of those skilled trades and get ourselves back into a competitive market position, and that is paying off. So look forward to being able to share that as a more comprehensive update with human resources in the future.
Madam Chair, just one comment on that. Thank you, Brian, for that. And as it relates to ATU, I mean, it was a really good year, and I want to thank Marcy and the team, but I want to thank ATU. This, I think, for anybody who was on management, I think we were really pleased with how that turned out, certainly. And I think that contract comes up again in 2027, 6, 7?
6.
Yeah, so that's right around the corner. And I haven't had a chance to meet the new president. We're outside of negotiations, so if somebody could help me set up a coffee or something like that, that would be great, because I really want to do some relationship building outside of negotiations. And I have been using the word partner a lot, and you do not, I've learned that at my council for sure. That is a word that is not often used, when you're coming into negotiations, because we all know negotiations can be hard, and sometimes they end up in the news and all the things are happening. And everybody, I think, is coming forward with their best intentions. But I really want to do everything that we can to make sure that they know we're coming forward, and I would like to be able to partner. And I think we saw some of that. Like, it is in their best interest. It is in our best interest if we just really lean into this, because without each other, we are not going to be able to hire the people that we need to hire. We are not going to be able to retain the people that we need to retain. They are partners in recruiting, and they are partners in the day-to-day. So I just want to say that out loud, because I think it's really important. These are things that are just kind of underneath all of it. It's the different layers, but that is going to be my approach as we move ahead in the next year or two.
Very good, thank you. On to kind of some of the topics that I listed on the slide. I know that at the last update, one of the items that was mentioned was the deployment of signage about how people could report problems. And so we have confirmed that's at all stations. As we saw earlier, we have the fair payment zone signs at all stations. And coupled with that, we took advantage through our public facilities maintenance team to take a mild winter by Minnesota standards and be able to go out and regularly power wash and clean the stations. We've suffered through many winters where we're not able to do that because of lack of access to hot water, or it creates ice buildup and causes other issues. But really proud of the team who leaned in, recognized that this is what we want to do, and so they made it happen, and they came in on weekends and other times when they didn't have to, but they, like I said, leaned in hard to that effort to make the system even better for our customers.
Madam Chair, just one on that too. I think it's been almost 2 years that I went out with Captain Raymond and did a ride on the Blue Line. I'd like to go back out, so if somebody can help me figure that one out, that'd be great, and maybe Green Line or wherever. Are the stations where we had the needles, is that a better situation now where there's not thousands of them laying there? And it's my fault that I haven't been out, since that last trip I had, but are we seeing a substantial change where we're trying to, it's not perfect, I'm sure, but is it getting better? Are we seeing progress? Because that is an eye-opener. I will never forget that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I can take a shot, and I'm sure both Leslie and the Chief would add to it, but I think that, a couple things have contributed to that. One thing being on the Blue Line and at the locations that have had the supplemental security. It's really changed a lot of both the behavior, the vandalism, and the trash that's been left behind at those stations. And I think, as the council heard, there was also a real lean in last year in some of the public art that's also helped with some of the graffiti and vandalism. But yeah, specific to needles, I think we've found, and I don't have the quantifiable numbers in front of me, but we've found that where we do have more presence more often, that it stems that behavior and people discarding or using openly in those settings.
Councilmember Barber?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I feel like this was a perfect moment to highlight something we're doing with Transportation Committee is we're starting to stand up a series of tours, both that would involve opportunities to ride the local and ABRT system, exposure to the Transportation Control Center, Rail Control Center, light rail, and also we're coming up with one where you can experience all modes and how to transfer among them all day. So I will make sure the invite goes to everybody, and now you all know, so I expect you all to be there.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, just on the reporting thing, there are some people that are still afraid to make a call in front of something that's happening or try to capture a photo. Will there ever be a day where the app itself can just have you select, we know what the top 5 or 10 things that are happening, you can just select, you can get the train number in there, a location because it's geo, and just make it easier for people to just silently report, because I've had people tell me that it's very intimidating if somebody feels like they're being reported on and they're just wanting to get off the train at their stop or whatever. Is that technology, is anybody implementing things like that to make it easier for reporting?
Thanks for that question, Councilmember Johnson. I was going to ask that too, and I know that kind of relates to our next slide as well.
Well, and Chair Chambliss, Councilmember Johnson, I'll just mention that, yes, we are looking at that right now. The report a problem signage that went out has a QR code that takes you to our customer relations form. So that's distinct from text for safety, but we have staff looking at how we potentially procure a more modern system. I think we have pieces that we are cobbling together to get there, but we are definitely looking at solutions other transit agencies are already doing as potential options for us as well. So I hope we'll have more to report on that soon.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Chief. Maybe you wanted to say something too, but that's just more data too,
Yes,
right? That's
absolutely.
data we are not gathering right now that could be very useful to us. And everything that we do is really data-driven, so.
And to that point, Councilmember, I'll mention, when the chief and I are out presenting, we encourage people to report. We can't promise you that you'll see an immediate police officer response, depending on what you're reporting, but to exactly the point you're making, we want to know what's happening. We can't address it if we don't know, and the more people reporting in, the better handle we're getting on patterns we need to get in front of, so.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Councilmember Johnson, in addition to everything that they've just articulated and described, we've also highlighted in red in each LRT vehicle the vehicle number. So when they use text for safety, 612-900-0411, 612-900-0411, they can say what car number they're in. Our real-time information center analysts will then go right to that car and transmit that message to police officers so they can respond rapidly.
Thank you.
Which takes us to the next slide.
No, I do have a question, though, before we go to the next slide, and that is the location of that text phone number on the light rail. Like for a 3-car train, where is that located? How easy is it to see if you're on the 3rd train or the 2nd train, et cetera?
Madam Chair, so we have it throughout the cars. I won't say that it's in every vehicle, but it's usually on the end of the car or be in the middle of the car as well. We try to remain, from what I've seen, I can't speak factually to this, but it seems like there's a pattern of the way our posters are situated on every vehicle.
Okay, and also keep in mind that there's various visibility, vision.
Yes.
Capabilities of people, so making sure that it's easy for someone who's vision impaired to be able to see or respond. Anything else? Okay, you can go on, Brian.
All
Next
right,
slide.
yeah, I will continue, thank you. The middle picture, what it's showing here, you might be able to tell, but 2 of the seats that are closest to the camera are a distinctive bright blue. Those have a seat pad covering that's higher, thicker, higher strength, thicker vinyl material that makes it a lot easier to clean. It's easier to see for customers who are approaching those seats, whether or not they're wet, soiled, somebody spilled their pop, all of those things, then the fabric-covered seats that have been our standard insert for a long time, almost 20 years. And so we tested these starting last August to try to get customer feedback, and the results of that were overwhelmingly positive. People thought they were more comfortable. They're created with a texture so that people's legs don't stick to them, those types of things that come into minds with vinyl seats. And so we're moving forward on ordering those with all of our new bus purchases. We're also starting a retrofit program across the A-line buses. Will be the first ones to be overhauled for those, and then we'll be moving forward. We'll bring that in through the capital improvement program proposal this summer to do a longer look on what that fleet conversion looks like. But we're really happy with the results and want to make that improvement for our customers as well as the staff who are charged with keeping the buses clean. Which moves us into the next item, and this is turning out to be a little bit of a misnomer because I have BRT cleaning initiative because we stationed helpers from our bus maintenance division at Ball of America and Brooklyn Center Transit Center, thinking that they would have just enough time to be able to focus on the BRT routes. At the BCTC, Brooklyn Center Transit Center, is both the C line and the D line. Mall of America is the D line. And there's a lot of buses that come through. And, you know, sometimes, depending on what happened on that trip, there might be a lot of activity needed. But these folks are really getting after it, and we're really impressed. And so now it's become a bus cleaning initiative. They're working so hard and so fast that they can get through those BRT buses, and they have both brooms, dustpans, pickup tools, as well as backpack type vacuums to, suck up all the crumbs and things that are left behind after each trip. And they're able to actually keep up and do all of the buses, not just those BRT buses. And so it's something that is just a little over a week old, but it's resonating very positively with our operators who want to be able to deliver high quality good service, as well as the customers that we've spoken to. So this is another area where, thanks to the organizational initiatives we've set aside to be able to have through that Q1 budget amendment, additional staff who can do this. And because they're in a position that is classified at the helper level, they're also able to make minor repairs. So saves us from swapping out buses that can lead to delays or inconvenience customers. And so it's really working out well. Again, it's early, but we're really happy about that. And I want to publicly give credit to Emily Bolenson, who's been working on that as a special project for the last 6 months or so. And then, as mentioned, this is, I think, my second to last slide, but we have the new train car number decals. As Chief mentioned, we had sort of the standard package that had come with our orders, which was just a black number with a corresponding letter decal against that sort of cream color background. It frankly blended into the background. I knew where it was because I work there. I know these, but hearing from customers and internal stakeholders said we should do something different. And so we now have these red decals that are on all of the newest vehicles. We have another set that's coming in for what we call the Type 1 or the 100 series cars. They need a little stronger adhesive based on what we're sticking them to. So they're across 8 locations, and every train car, it's denoting very specifically the information that helps our dispatch, our text for safety, and our police know where the issues are on board the vehicles. As Chief mentioned, all of the rail cars have had live streaming real-time video for quite a while now, a number of years. We've moved that this last quarter into our buses as well. And so this is a really nice feature that, again, the Real-Time Information Center using the onboard router is able to sort of tunnel in and be able to see that based on bus operator security reports. And so it's, again, providing that tool so that the police knows what response is necessary, also helps us triage what the operator may be experiencing, so then we can immediately start to think about lining up what resources they may need, if they're going to need to have trips covered, or if they need to be able to take a break and go home for the day. All of those things that we have in our toolbox, it really helps us. The bus security monitor displays are another element that was recently covered in the Star Tribune. We have close to 150 now this week installed on board the buses. And what that's doing is it's rotating through to show people who are riding the bus that the sign that said you were being recorded wasn't a joke. It's actually something that is happening on board the bus, much like a self-checkout lane or other things that are sort of normal in the public space these days. And so we received very positive feedback, just to be mindful that it may not be for everybody. Went back and looked, and in our customer relations database, we've had only about 3 reports of people who did not care for this investment. That's pretty good considering we started this as a pilot program in late 2018 and then just worked into securing funding and getting that rolled out. So we're very happy about that. I touched on the live security cameras and the live streaming that's able to be accessed by chief staff. And then another investment that was made is having the real-time information center have the ability to make public safety messages on all the rail platforms. Since the opening of Blue Line, we've had the ability to make operational messages out of our rail control center, but now chief staff has the ability to do that for public safety events as well. So we'll use that very smartly, and as the chief has told his staff, we want to make sure that if we're providing information about police are on their way, that police are really on their way. And so that's important to not bluff our way through it. We want to make sure that we're communicating openly and honestly. So with that, I will conclude and turn it back.
Questions? Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple of questions and a comment. So most of them will go to you, Brian. So the first question is, we've seen this big uptick in our facilities work orders. So for council members, if you haven't been out recently, bus stops all now have QR codes that you can scan and report a facilities issue, whether it's garbage or broken glass or graffiti and all of that. And it looks to me in the narrative kind of describes this too, that a lot of that increase is because of the QR codes. So it's not only having the different layers of personnel out on the system, but it's our actual riders doing, following what we're putting out there to take pride in your ride and kind of being part of the solution. And so my question, if we're getting all that input, how long are we taking to kind of respond to some of those and some of those facility issues and whatnot so that they can come back and see the impact of their response too?
Madam Chair and Chair Barber, that's an answer I don't have today, but it's certainly something that we can work on and be able to provide an update. That information is really important to us. When we submitted the report to the legislature about establishing standards, we committed to being as responsive as we can with the staffing we have available, but we did try to set ourselves with some standards, including graffiti, especially offensive in nature, is dealt with as soon as possible and no more than 24 hours. And so elements like that are really important. And one of the other things that we're doing, maybe to Councilmember Johnson's comments about building partnerships, is internally working at how do we come up with a non-traditional approach to better utilizing our workforce? Right now, we have a system that's been established where we have people who are focused solely on facilities. Then we have people who are focused on the track right-of-way on the rail. Then we have people focused on the vehicles. Well, I think what we need in our environment is more of a all-hands, quick strike team who can just not have it as part of their regular routine cleanup, but can be there so when we get these reports from the field, from our passengers, from other employees, that they're able to be deployed in real time to take care of those issues without pulling people off the planned maintenance that they're out there to do.
I'm going to follow up to that one before the next question. Do we ever circle back when a customer reports something to them to show, they sent us a picture of something wrong? Do we send them a picture of something fixed?
Madam Chair and Chair Barber, that's a really good question, and I'll find out the answer. I'm certainly a lot more accustomed to some of the traditional operations, customer complaints about my bus was late or it passed me up, some of those things. But yeah, I'll find out and close the loop on that, make sure we're doing the same with our customers.
That'd be great, thank you. My other question is actually related to the customer complaints. So looking at the information, and so this is in the report, by the way, as a decreased customer complaints overall, but significant to see on the data is there's decreased complaints about accidents, crimes, and police resources, but customer behavior complaints are coming up. And it seems coincidentally to kind of tie to when we started putting out all the code of conduct data. Have we actually looked at that to see if the timing of that kind of aligns or not? Because you can see where those things shifted. And I think that's actually pretty significant.
Yeah, I think I'd like to get the answer to that as well, because that might be customer empowerment. They feel empowered.
Yeah.
And they're being responsive and seeing that they're in this together with us.
Chair.
Ryan?
And just Councilmember Barber, on top of that, I mean, Leslie and I were talking about this, I think, last week, but there's also a part two, and this is, I mean, I would just say anecdotally from experience, you see this, you feel this over multiple years too. As severity of things around you goes down, you notice other things that in the past, just on the hierarchy of how you're going to approach the world around you, you might have just tolerated before, but then you realize again, like, no, we're not living in that environment. That's not tolerable as well. And I don't have any data to put behind that, but I can tell you that that's my experience too. I'm annoyed when snow doesn't get shoveled at a station on time in the way that I wasn't for the last 3 years, but back to being crabby me before some of what we went through, right? Like those things come back. And I do think that's probably a part, but the code of conduct is good. And it does tie, I wanted to tie it to one of Councilmember Johnson's earlier parts about needles. I mean, I was going to say, like, I don't see needles laying around anymore. And that was a thing. It's not a thing. The first time that there was an interaction recently was a passenger saying to another passenger, do not leave that needle right here. And look, there were still things going on, right? Like that's not to say that the world still doesn't struggle with the idea that substance abuse is a real thing in public space. But the idea of a needle being left out was deemed intolerable by a friend of the person and like saw the whole thing play out that way. That wouldn't have happened a year ago, to the council member's point.
Thank you, and I do appreciate that, because I think it's some of these things, I do think there's a different sensitivity now that, which is good. I'd rather have people looking at the details than, and that means they're really trying to, like we said, take pride in your ride and really make it a community experience. I just have a final comment for all of you, all of your staff, all the people who work in this effort. I just overall want to thank all of you. I hear from lots of people, as you know, with my role as Transportation Committee Chair, whether it's, people who are riders, people who are community members, people who are transit advocates. They are not shy about what they say to me. And overall, without variation, the theme is that they're seeing progress both in behavior and cleanliness, very much an acknowledgement that there's still more work to do. But without doubt, they've been saying they're very thankful and very cognizant of all the efforts that all of you are doing. So just knowing that we're taking pride, we're taking care, it's really being recognized in the community. And I just want you guys all to know that, because I'll tell you, I do get an earful, and all I've heard is really thanks for all of you.
Madam Chair.
Great and agreed. Councilmember Johnson.
Just echoing Councilmember Barber's sentiments, and it wouldn't be without advocacy from everybody here, but Councilmember Barber happened to also live in the district where there's Vice Transportation Chair Tabke. I mean, it was many years that we had been lobbying for funding for these things. And, the funding comes in and the things can start to happen. I don't think we should ever take that for granted. And I think that we do want partners in the reporting, and at some point, though, we need to continue to solve these other things so that they don't become tired of having to be the, sometimes they just need a ride where they can just do their thing, right? So I think we're on a right path. I just want to continue to be steeped in the data, steeped in information for policymakers. The anecdotes are very good, we need that too, but the data is going to tell us what is going on. And I think to Councilmember Morales' point and Councilmember Pacheco's point, we got to get around pipeline. I mean, there's just so much going on, but there are partners out there. Councilmember Pacheco says it regularly in management, which I so appreciate. Councilmember Lilligren does too. All of that needs to be brought to the council so that all the pieces of the puzzle are there, and we're trying to assemble them, right? So we've been, I think, at least since my time on the council, we've been, again, great reporting, great efforts, but we've been just looking in silos, and we've got to start cross-cutting this work so that we can, where you're still, I don't want to say deficient, but where you are needing things, right? And it's incumbent upon all of the committees to make sure that wherever we're touching that work, we understand it, and we can advocate for it, and we can message it out into our communities. Because if we are not, able to do that and have the toolkit to do that, I mean, sometimes I just have felt like, what is my role here? And I'm not doing that anymore. So I appreciate your hard work. It is not going without notice, and I know you have a long way to go, but we're here for you, so.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I think we've had a very good discussion today with the information items. I'm glad that we had a full focus on the safety and security and action plan. It is a strategic action plan with priorities, and I appreciate the approach that was taken to handle those things that needed to be handled first, and then being strategic on the next steps, including the collaboration with our leaders in the police realm, as well as just making sure that there's continuous improvement. And the partnership is something that we've been asking for a long time, and the collaboration with the different cities and counties and officers and security folks is a good start, and I'm glad that we're going to have some next steps and continue that. So thank you for your quarterly report. We'll look forward to following up with some of the information that we requested and the next report. With that, I think that is all we have for our information items. Do we have anything, Regional Administrator Ryan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One update, you received the Office of the Legislative Auditor report related to Metro Mobility from our team earlier this week. If you haven't seen it yet, it's in your inbox. If you don't see it, please let me know and we can get it to you. We will be testifying in front of the Senate next week on Wednesday. It's scheduled for Wednesday at 3 o'clock. And so as our teams and the chair all work on coordinating that, you'll see some group of us here and some group of us not here representing us there simultaneously. Shout out to Charles Carlson and his team for all the work to respond and work with the OLA throughout the process on information. I think the biggest thing that stands out that I would just highlight, because there's always a lot when an audit is supposed to highlight all sorts of things that you learn from and grow from. 2 million rides a year in the non-federally mandated areas, an average of 14 rides a day were under the ones that were not able to be serviced. So 5,400 rides would be the number on that on the math. 2 in the federally serviced area that were missed out of that 2 million. I think that's like an important baseline from which to start. And then you look at this year, and the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee recognized that this year we've seen no dropped rides, and so we look forward to the conversation, but no dropped rides. And that's a sign of an organization that's learning and seeing opportunity in that work as we go forward. And we know how important a service it is across this region as one of many things that we do. So looking forward to it.
Madam Chair?
Thank you.
Ryan, would it be possible to get an invite, a calendar invite with the time of that committee hearing and a link to it in an invitation so that if some of us want to watch it virtually, it's just, I try to keep track of that, especially the governance stuff when that was going on or certain, but if it's not on a calendar in my world, I'm not going to see it. Would that be hard to do if council members just want to have it sit there and if they can just listen in?
So Madam Chair, Councilmember Johnson, 2 things. One, you can't sit in and watch the whole thing because there's going to be a council meeting.
Oh, at the same time?
Right, that's why I'm saying some of us, so we need some people to come here. We'll run on the big screen.
Gotcha.
But I'll still have, Judge Shetland can send out a note here to the council that just highlights next week's hearing and the time. And if you're in a spot where you want to watch at 3 o'clock, there's a chance that we'll be able to address a lot of this before the council meeting starts as well.
Okay.
It's all kind of coming together in real time. And as you know, with everything going on at the legislature, I'm telling you all this and it may end up being in 3 weeks at 3 o'clock. So we're going to be flexible, but we'll get something out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. That ends our items for this meeting, and this meeting is adjourned.